Should we start right there? Or start right here? You started. Hi, Wendy Rodrigue here. I am visiting with you from the Capitol Park Museum, a Louisiana State Museum here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, alongside the Louisiana State Capitol. Fabulous museum. They've recently opened their exhibition on the history of the Washington Mardi Gras Ball, and as it happens, George Rodrigue was king in 1994, and I was thrilled to be able to loan a few pieces. So let's start here with George's portrait as king. He did this before he was actually king, but when he had just been asked. And he rushed to do it beforehand because he wanted to make sure that it made it into the book Blue Dog, which was his first major art book on the Blue Dog series, which went on to become a blockbuster, literally more than 200,000 copies in 5 languages worldwide. This painting just made it in and was the star of the epilogue. I have just had it cleaned, again, 1984, and beautifully framed by Goldie Frame Makers in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I love seeing George's self-portrait there. You see his iconic oak trees cut off at the top and the light in the distance, and he has invited us in to experience Mardi Gras with him, to actually greet the king. And of course, it wouldn't be right without Blue Dog alongside him. I just love it. Wonderful. It was in a private collection for many years, by the way, in Japan, and I was just able to get it back 2 years ago. It had not been on view all these years, so here it is almost 30 years later. And so here we have, was happy I could find this, George's sweatshirt from when he was king. Notice the paint splatters on it. How cool is that? He liked to wear this one. It says, in case you can't make it out, King, it's good to be the king, with the blue dog there. For the rest of us, I was there in '94. He had made for us the same blue dog image, except that ours set across it King's Crew, spelled Kreaux. And most elegant is here is the goblet. This is made by George, obviously designed by George Rodrigue, and made in partnership with Pilgrim Glass out of West Virginia for his queen, Queen Kate Graham, and I believe of Covington. I think she was from Covington. And I have one because it was George's, and then she had one. There were only 2 made, and she very graciously loaned this goblet, her goblet, for this exhibition. It's called cameo glass, so it's actually layers of glass that are then cut down into them, and then this magnificent, of course, amber thick glass bulb on the top, which is quite wonderful. George's casual wear when he was king he was almost more thrilled about this than he was his costume, and it was this jacket made by Arturo of North Beach Leather with all of the heavy fringe. It was also beautifully beaded. I wish I could remember the name of the bead worker because she did an incredible job. The back has a gorgeous scene across it too. And if you can possibly notice, up on the collars there are sterling silver Blue Dog art pieces, really, and those were designed by George, who went to his good friend Mr. Douglas Magnus, who is filming this for us right now, and had those made, and they're quite incredible, and he was able to attach those onto the jacket. George, maybe some of you have seen George wear this. He wore this for the rest of his life, for every special occasion. It was really his favorite, and at every Washington Mardi Gras going forward. Moving along, we have a really nice wall piece that they put together here with a few of the photographs. That's George and his cousin Arlene, who won the costume contest every year. George said that back in those days in New Iberia, they called it Carnival balls instead of calling it Mardi Gras, and they would win every year. And of course, you can see why in this beautiful colorized photograph. And then we have George at Mardi Gras in Lafayette in the late 1980s, the bottom on the right. George loved Mardi Gras, dressed up all the time. I actually have that costume and need to make a mental note to donate that to the museum. And then on the left, you'll see George in Washington Mardi Gras, at Washington Mardi Gras with his queen, Courtney Kate Graham, in 1994. They were up on their throne, on their float / throne, and about to greet guests. And then look at George. He just did not know how to sit in tights and a tunic, and so you can see his red silk drawers underneath there. They had dogs on them and fringe and caused quite a scene. He's also wearing his King baseball cap that he had made there with flashing blue lights. It said King across it. And his custom boots that have blue dogs on them. He just loved being King of DC Mardi Gras, although I will say he said he had a lot more fun being a past king. And to my mind, the star of the show is certainly this fantastic banner. Now, this George hand painted. You know, this is how big it is. I'm gonna get here so you can see. This is huge. George hand painted this in 1996 for an exhibition at Union Station in Washington, D.C., along with 3 others, which are all completely different. Now, in these days, you would normally print these sorts of things, but no, not back then. He actually hand painted it at a billboard company in Lafayette. He was up on scaffolding, and you can actually see that he hand painted this. This is one of the largest Rodrigue paintings that there are. This was owned by Congressman Jimmy Hayes, who through networking in Washington Mardi Gras arranged for George to have this exhibition. DC Mardi Gras is, of course, a lot about networking. Lots of wonderful things happen for my foundation, the Life and Legacy Foundation, because of it. Thank you very much. And so that is how this incredible exhibition came about. George, to thank Congressman Hayes, presented him with the banner, and Congressman Hayes, in turn, to thank George, presented it as a gift to the LSU Museum of Art. And that is where it normally hangs today, and they graciously loaned it for this exhibition. Now, let's take a quick run to the other side. Come on, Douglas. We're gonna go quick because we've got one more thing to see. We can pan all these beautiful costumes. Incredible. On our way, oh, I believe this was Brian Batts, maybe his father. Incredible. The wonderful actor and incredible singer, Brian Batts. And, I mean, just really magnificent. Gives you an idea of what goes on in Washington Mardi Gras. And we'll swing right around here. So that we can end with these amazing Rodrigue works that have not been on view in many, many years. This is George's portrait of his dear friend, Marion Edwards. And Marion passed away, not long after George, and actually not long before George, I should have said. He was such a dear friend, he and his wonderful wife, Penny. And George did this painting. I actually have a blog post about it. If you want to look it up on legacyarttour.org and just type in King Marion, you can read all about it, including seeing the photographs that George put together. Now, what he was trying to do here, if you see the little boy in the distance, that is baby Marion, little boy Marion, dreaming of being king one day. And of course, he eventually does. And look how odd these trees are. Like the tree that little Marion is sitting in front of is behind the big tree, and yet it is in front of the big tree. Do you see that? And right behind Marion, who is in very typical Rodrigue fashion, cut out and pasted onto this tree with no shadow, because of course his light is not a spotlight or the sunlight, it is an inner light, in this case I guess glowing with the regal joy of being king of this great celebration. A little bit more fun trivia is that the 2 costume gentlemen in the back, as you'll see from the photographs if you look up the blog, one of those are both friends of George's, and one of those is Chef John Foles, as a matter of fact, that posed for that. Also very typical and wonderful, the tree cut off at the top, just like in George's king portrait, so that all these incredible things can happen underneath it, and so that we will be invited into the painting to experience and greet King Marion. Really fabulous. We miss you, Marion. And finally, look at this, the actual sketch that George did before he completed the painting for Marion. Marion did own this piece. I believe it was loaned by his daughter for this exhibition, owned the painting. And so here is the drawing from 1984 for this piece. George liked to start with a sketch for something like this, of course, particularly commissioned. But you can see that later on in 2011, this would have happened, I believe, when the show happened at the LSU Museum of Art, honoring Marion and his brother Edwin Edwards and all of George's governor portraits. And George came back at the request of the family and added the blue dog and a new signature onto that piece. So there is your brief tour, as brief as I can do, of the Washington Mardi Gras exhibition, particularly as it pertains to Rodrigue. Come see it. It's up, I believe, all the way until next fall. I loved it. Glad we came. What do you think, Douglas?
It's pretty fabulous. Pretty fabulous.
It's pretty fabulous. Big congratulations to everyone with the Louisiana State Museum system, particularly the costume people, the costume folks and curators, because it's fantastic. Thank you so much, and happy Mardi Gras, y'all.